Ever since I first put this desk setup together over a year ago, I've been rocking these, the G335 headphones from Logitech, and while they're pretty good for the price, I was getting a little tired of always having to struggle with the cord, which for some reason would always end up getting tangled under the wheels of my chair whenever I'd move around. Besides, once I started to think about the idea of upgrading my space to turn it into the ultimate multi-purpose hybrid desk setup, link to that video in the description, I knew that it was time for me to find a new pair of headphones. Ones that might be able to replace every other pair of headphones I own. Enter the SteelSeries Arctis Nova 7. The Arctis Nova 7 from SteelSeries are a pair of award-winning, depending on your definition of that term, wireless headphones that sport a ton of features and come in a bunch of varieties, all of which I'll get into in this video. Now, it is technically a bit of an older set, being a few years old at the time of me making this video, but they still come highly recommended and might just be a better deal now than ever before, given that you can find them at a cheaper price. But of course the question is, are they really worth it? Well, in this video, I'm going to be covering the differences between the various versions of these headphones, what's in the box, the design, the build quality, the sound, of course, as well as the microphone, the battery, and finally connectivity. There are time codes if you want to skip to any particular section. But before we get into all that, I want to quickly take a moment to thank the sponsor of today's video, me, or well, I guess you could say my job, because they do pay me, but I also work for it. So anyway, this video is unsponsored, and I bought this headset with my own money so I could give you a completely unbiased review. In exchange, if you find this video to be useful, do consider giving it a like and subscribe to my channel for more tech-related content. And with all that out of the way, let's get into it. Alright, so if you've done even a simple Google search on the Arctis Nova 7s by now, you might have been left wondering just what's up with all the different varieties in which you can buy this set of headphones. So let me just quickly go over all of them. There's the standard Arctis Nova 7, then there's the Arctis Nova 7P, which has been optimized for PlayStation, and the Arctis Nova 7X, which has been optimized for Xbox. But before we get into what exactly those different versions entail, it's worth it to point out that there are several other versions of the Nova 7s as well. You see, SteelSeries has decided to also release several themed limited editions of the Nova 7s. You might have noticed by now that I'm rocking these red and golden ones, which are the Dragon Edition, because apparently someone at SteelSeries was a huge fan of Cisco's 1999 debut album. And yes, that is the guy who did the thong song.
What do you think you're doing?
Other than that, there's also a World of Warcraft edition, a Diablo 4 edition, and a FaZe Clan edition. As far as how all of these versions actually differ from each other, SteelSeries themselves made this super advanced overview, which they clearly put a lot of time and effort into. As you can see, the Nova 7, 7P, and 7X all work for PC, PlayStation, and phone. And they all have Bluetooth. However, only the 7X works with the Xbox, and while the 7X and regular 7 both have chat mix, the 7P instead has side tone, or mic monitoring as it's also known. Now, the limited editions all function exactly like the regular Nova 7, but all come with a little extra item of some sort. The World of Warcraft edition comes with a free in-game item for World of Warcraft. The Diablo 4 edition comes with a mount trophy for that game. The Dragon Edition comes with an extra set of ear plates, and the FaZe Clan Edition comes with chlamydia. I'm kidding. Clearly, none of those guys bang. Consensually. Someone who does bang, however, is our correspondent in the field, Brad Pitt. So let's turn to him and ask ourselves the question we're all wondering. Why do all of your kids keep changing their surnames to hide their relation to you? Oh, yeah, and also, what's in the box? So, once we open up this rather nice looking box, we get a bag containing the headphones, which we'll get to in a second, a set of bonus ear plates because this is the Dragon Edition, and then we open this little compartment for glory, which according to SteelSeries, means a manual, a bunch of different wires, including a 3.5mm aux cord for a wired connection, a USB-A to USB-C cable, and a USB-C to USB-A extension cable, as well as a fairly compact USB-C dongle. And finally, there are the headphones themselves. And my initial impression is that these things look really nice. They feel pretty solid and well built without being too heavy, and I really like the attention to detail, like the little dragon scales on the inner headband, which is obviously a completely superficial thing to add, but shows the level of care and craftsmanship that went into designing these things. Overall, a pretty good unboxing experience, and always nice to see companies that don't skimp out on the basic accessories such as cables and cords. Now, it's impossible for me to talk about the design of these headphones without basing it on the Dragon Edition, seeing as these are the only ones I have. But I guess in essence, the overall form of these things is the same regardless of which version you get. As far as colors go, the red and gold look that this version sports is definitely a bold choice, but I actually really like it. As I mentioned before, it does come with an extra set of ear plates, which look a bit more modest, and switching these out is as easy as popping out the old ones and putting in the new ones, which sit firmly thanks to their magnetic design. Now, if you're not the type of person who loves sticking out in the crowd, then the standard version of the Nova 7s do look a lot more subtle while still being relatively nice looking, at least based on what I can tell from the pictures. Alternatively, you can also go the exact opposite route and spec these out with additional headbands and plates that you can buy from SteelSeries to really customize these headphones and make them feel unique to you. So while those extra packs are, of course, something you'd have to pay even more money for, at least the option's there if you want it. There are a decent amount of buttons and dials on these headphones, with the right side containing two separate power buttons, one for Bluetooth and one for the dongle, both of which can be turned on or off independently of each other or at the same time, which I'll talk about when we get to connectivity. There's also a volume dial for chat mix, which lets you adjust the volume of the team chat in online games separately from the game audio. Although on the PlayStation version, the Nova 7P, this dial is used to control the side tone, which is how loudly you can hear yourself in the microphone. And finally, on this side, there's a USB-C port for charging. On the left ear cup, you get a 3.5mm aux port for a wired connection, which is always nice to have, a little button to toggle the microphone on or off, a volume slider, and finally a retractable microphone which pulls out to be pretty adjustable and sits super flush with the headphones when not in use. As far as the build quality goes, these headphones do feel surprisingly sturdy and well built. For one, they barely rattle at all when you shake them, which, if you've seen my video on the Sony Pulse Elites, is not something I could say for all headphones in this price range. Just take a look at this comparison between the two. The headphones are made of a PVD coated steel, which supposedly helps with scratch resistance, but what do I know? I'm not a blacksmith? Anyway, they come in at a weight of 325 grams, or about 0.72 pounds, or 11.5 ounces, whichever nonsensical number you prefer if you're using freedom units. Other than that, the Nova 7s also come with some pretty plush ear cups, as well as a decent range of adjustability with both the swivel of said ear cups, how far out they extend, and even the positioning of the headband itself. And the end result is a pair of headphones that feel pretty comfortable. While I don't think they're the most comfortable headphones I've ever worn, especially considering just how much I love the DT990 Pros in that regard, I have been able to rock these bad boys for several hours at a time without feeling any fatigue or discomfort. Alright, let's get to the point most people would probably agree is the most important when it comes to headphones. How do they actually sound? Well, I think there's a pretty simple comparison to be made here. Those of you who are a little bit older might remember Beats by Dre. They were by far some of the most popular headphones in the world, but aside from the branding and the marketing surrounding them, their signature sound was a bit divisive. You see, Beats by Dre were known for being very bass heavy, which obviously leaned into the type of music Dr. Dre was known for making, and to the casual listener, especially someone who loved bass-driven music like hip-hop for example, they sounded great as they really amped up the low end and made the music feel more powerful as such. But of course, on the other end of the scale, people who wanted a more neutral sound, either due to a desire for authenticity in their audio or simply because they didn't like the bass-driven approach of the beats, absolutely hated them. And well, you don't have to be Nostradamus to see where I'm going with this comparison. The Arctis Nova 7s are very bass heavy. Now, in some cases, this might be a positive for you based on what kind of things you like to listen to, but in other cases, it can be the exact opposite. While they sound great for certain types of music, especially the kind of stuff I like to listen to, they do lack a little bit of crispness when watching stuff like tech reviews on YouTube, for example. I don't think they dip into the territory of sounding muddy or outright bad, even at the worst of times, but it certainly is noticeable enough for you to have to take into consideration before buying them. Now, all of that being said, there are a couple of saving graces here too. The first one being SteelSeries GG, which is an app you can download for your desktop that comes with a built-in mixer and equalizer, meaning you can fine-tune the sound profile to your liking either by messing around with the EQ yourself or by using one of the many presets. Now, let me be clear about this. The app itself isn't great. And what's worse is it'll only work on your computer, meaning there's no way to use this EQ on your console or on your phone. And that really sucks, because let me tell you, when you find the right EQ for these bad boys, the sound goes from being pretty good in certain circumstances to just flat out great. It is a real shame that SteelSeries doesn't give you an option to use an EQ on these things outside of the desktop application, even if it was just by way of fitting a couple of presets onto the device itself so you could switch between them at will. Hell, some of these presets honestly just straight up sound better overall than what the default sound profile does. Now, again, I don't think they ever sound bad, but it really doesn't make sense to me why they would include a feature like this with their headphones and not take full advantage of it across the board. Alright, now I did mention that there was one other saving grace when it came to sound, and that was that these things support spatial audio, including Sony's Tempest 3D audio. Meaning these things are every bit as good at giving you a full spatial audio experience as something like the Sony Pulse Elites. Speaking of which, I might do a heads-up comparison between these two headsets at some point in the future to see which one offers you a better bang for your buck when it comes to the PlayStation, so subscribe to my channel if you want to see more stuff like that. And just before we finish off this section, I do want to mention that the Arctis Nova 7s do not come with active noise cancelling, meaning that as far as tuning out the outside world goes, your best bet is still to crank up the music to 11, or just to make that weird inaudible expression we all do when we want to avoid talking to someone while wearing headphones. As I mentioned earlier, there's a little microphone tucked into the left ear cup, which, unlike Nick Cannon, pulls out and is fairly easy to position where you want. As for how it sounds, well, you're listening to it now. This is being recorded straight from the microphone and hasn't gone through any processing at all. Now, SteelSeries uses something called ClearCast AI, which they claim can reduce background noise by up to 25 decibels and remove keyboard clacking and sounds of loud snacking. So, let's put it to the test. This is me typing away while talking, and if I stop talking, and then to test the other claim, I brought this. So I'm just going to open this up and we'll see, maybe take a bite or two. Things I do for science. Now, I was a little unclear on whether or not this ClearCast AI thing actually works when you're recording with it, but either way, now you have a soundbite of what this thing sounds like. When it comes to battery life, SteelSeries claims the Arctis Nova 7s get up to 38 hours of battery life on a single charge, which is pretty good. The headset charges via the USB-C port on the right ear cup, and in case you forget to charge them and you find they're low on battery, you can get 6 hours of battery life with just 15 minutes of charging. Now, personally, I've owned these for a few weeks and I've only had to charge them once, even though I've been putting in a lot of hours using them. So overall, I'd say they're pretty solid when it comes to battery life and the charging experience. If I had to make any suggestions for improvements, it would be to take a look at the Sony Pulse Elites, which do have a charging port on the underside of the headband, which connects to a plug built into the accompanying set of headphone hangers, meaning they're always fully charged whenever you need them, which is just a brilliant solution and one I think more companies should implement. But honestly, I can't complain about the battery life in the Nova 7s. Alright, so last time I did a review of a pair of headphones, I saved the worst for last, which was in the category of connectivity. And this time, it's the exact opposite. The Arctis Nova 7s excel when it comes to connectivity, in fact, and I'd argue it might just be one of the best things about them. So first of all, let's talk about the different choices you have for how to connect them and how they work. Just like most wireless headphones, they do come with Bluetooth, which is fairly easy to set up and pair with whatever device you want. One notable downside here though is that it's only Bluetooth 5.01, which has a fairly high amount of latency, but most modern phones and TVs have a way to compensate for that, and I haven't found it to be an issue yet. On the other hand, it also comes with a dongle that enables a 2.4 GHz wireless connection, and this thing is really impressive. It has next to no latency, and I found it works just as well on my PlayStation as it does on my PC. Hell, it's so good that I'm even able to edit videos while using the wireless connection, which, if you've ever tried to do something like that on a pair of older Bluetooth headphones, for example, is not something you'd ever be able to do. I still wouldn't trust it over a wired connection when it comes to making music, but honestly, the latency is so low that I'd probably be able to get away with it. Now, what's really special about all of this is that there are actually two power buttons on the Nova 7s, one for Bluetooth and one for the dongle, and they work independently of each other, meaning you can easily power on one without having to deal with the other. Like on some headphones I've had, even if they came with a dongle, as soon as I turn them on, I'd have to disconnect them from whatever Bluetooth device I'd used them with before. But with these headphones, that's literally not ever an issue. And even better, you can also use both of them simultaneously, meaning you could, for example, have them plugged into your PC or PlayStation with the dongle and have them connected to your phone via Bluetooth at the same time. Hell, if you were to get a call in the middle of a gaming session, the mic would even automatically mute from the game and switch over to working with your phone, which is just the kind of everyday quality of life thing that it's always good to see companies cater to, so props to SteelSeries for that. Also, I have yet to have any connection issues with these things at all, and I've even seen reports that the wireless dongle works up to 33 meters or 110 feet away, which, if you have a house where you find yourself walking that far from your computer, then you probably don't have to watch reviews like this to decide whether or not to spend money on something like headphones. Oh, and on top of all that, there's also the option to plug in an aux cord for a wired connection, with that cord being included in the box. So connectivity-wise, the Arctis Nova 7s are just mwah. Okay, so you've heard me rant about these things for most of this video by now, so it probably won't come as a surprise to you that I do really like them. However, they are not perfect. Most notably, the heavy bass emphasis of the sound profile is a little much at times, even for me, and that's coming from someone who mostly listens to music with lots of bass in it. Again, I won't say it ever gets muddy, and they're certainly not bad, but once you try to mess around with that EQ for just a bit and see how good they could sound, you'll be hard-pressed to go back to that default sound profile, which you unfortunately will have to do on every single device you use these things with other than your computer. But then again, if you're okay with having a little extra low end in your videos, or music, or podcasts, or whatever you like to listen to, then you'll also benefit from having a well-built set of headphones that's comfortable to use for hours on end, with a battery life and charging speed that's absolutely great, and a ton of options and great features when it comes to how you connect them to your devices. And in that case, I'd say the Arctis Nova 7s are definitely worth it. That's it for this time. If you found this video to be useful, do consider giving it a like and let me know in the comments down below if there's anything in particular you'd like to see me try or review next. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.